It's time to talk about the important issues for the natural state, and there's only one place to turn for that. Opportunity Arkansas's Nic Horton. You can find Nic's work at opportunityarkansas.org.
And welcome back to the Wednesday edition of First News here on the 23rd of October, 20 minutes in front of 8 o'clock. And we've got lots to go over today as we get very close to Election Days. Now joining us from Opportunity Arkansas is Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of the organization. And Nic, welcome back to the show. How are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I don't like this heat coming back. I thought it was fall.
Good
grief.
It's disgusting. Nature should be ashamed of itself right now. So
global warming probably.
I guess here's the only problem with your theory there, Nic, is that the record was set in 1939.
Oh, dadgummit. All right.
So
back to the drawing board.
Yeah, we got to come up with something else. I don't know. Maybe go to a school in Sweden and find out. I don't know. But so Nic, we hit on this last week some, but we now have the final decision from the Arkansas Supreme Court, and Issue 3 about marijuana access is not going to be counted. It'll be printed on the ballot, but not counted. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it's just the casino issue, and then if you live here in Little Rock, you're going to have the penny sales tax to vote on as well. But is that about it in a nutshell for the ballot issue outside of the president and then the congressional races here in our state?
Yeah, well, you'll still have Issue 1, which is a referred amendment from the legislature that basically says, it's going to amend the lottery scholarship program to say that those funds can be used on VOTEC, vocational schools, in addition to, standard 4-year programs.
Right.
So that was an amendment that was referred out by the legislature. Representative Robin Lundstrom kind of led the charge on that, and that will be on the ballot. So it'll be Issue 1. That issue, and then Issue 2.
Now,
those will be the only two. And you'll still see Issue 3 on your ballot, but It's not going to count.
Now, the lottery, this Issue 1, the lottery scholarship, that's a good thing, yes, that it can be used for other schools?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I'm not a huge fan of the lottery,
Sure.
certainly in general, and I was against it at the time several years ago when it came into Arkansas. But I think if we're going to have the lottery, which it seems like we are, we ought to make it as flexible as possible for families and students to be able to use it. Look, we all know, we've all heard kind of the micro bit and the Dave Ramsey narrative that's out there of like, look, not everybody needs a 4-year degree. Not everybody needs a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts.
That's right.
In gender studies or art history or whatever it might be.
Right.
Like, we need people in the workforce desperately. And you look at Arkansas today, we've got more than 70,000 open jobs. A lot of those open jobs are blue-collar jobs that require trained skills, plumbers, welders, electricians. We need more of those workers contributing to our workforce desperately if we're going to continue to grow our economy and compete with states around us. So I think the more flexibility, the better.
I would agree. I would agree with that. So we've got the Issue 1, and then we've got the casino issue, and then if you're in Little Rock, you got the penny sales tax, and then president, and then the congressional races. As far as the congressional races in Arkansas, is anyone in any possible trouble with their campaigns as far as the incumbents go, going back to Congress? Is this going to be a rough last 2 weeks for them, or does it look like pretty smooth sailing?
No, I don't think there will be any close races whatsoever here in Arkansas. There's only a handful of them that even have challengers.
Right.
And none of those will be within even single digits. I feel pretty confident in saying that. Now, around the country, obviously, there's some competitive races, and it's going to be down to the wire probably to figure out who's going to control the Senate and who's going to control the House of Representatives at the federal level. But no, I think all of our federal delegation, we don't have any of the senators up.
Right.
And then on the House side, there's only a handful of them. To be honest with you, I do this for a living, and I couldn't even tell you the Democrat opponents on the other side in some of those races. I don't even know their names, and I think that's going to be the case for most Arkansans. We've got a pretty strong federal delegation, folks who I think overall do a pretty good job in representing Arkansas and our values, and so I don't expect really that any of those races are going to be close.
All right. And, of course, I'm sure you saw the early voting numbers. A lot of people are already getting out to vote. But, of course, November 5th is when it will officially take place. So 2 weeks from yesterday, as we're talking with Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas. And so wanted to go back to Medicaid reform and just healthcare overall.
Hey, Toby,
state.
before I forget, I forgot to mention the Supreme Court race. That's a big one.
Oh, yes.
There is a very important look. We've seen in the last few years when it comes to the LEARNS Act, when it comes to this driver's license rule, people being able to put different genders on their driver's license, which frankly I think becomes a public safety issue at some point.
Yep.
We've seen a lot of instances where having a conservative Supreme Court has been very, very important. We need justices on the Supreme Court who uphold the law and don't try to make law, because that's not the role of the judiciary. The role of the judiciary is to be an independent referee and say, okay, here's what the law says, and here's what we think the intent of the law was based on the wording and the context around it when it was passed. But we're not going to legislate from the bench. We're not going to try to shove our ideology into the judicial process. That's a very, very important race. You've got two current justices, which is a kind of a unique instance, I think, where you've got two sitting members of the Supreme Court that are going against each other for Chief Justice. We don't make political endorsements. We don't get involved in political campaigns at Opportunity Arkansas. So I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. But I think if you go back and look at their judicial records, even just on issues like the LEARNS Act, the gender issue with the licensing, the driver's licenses, some of these recent cases related to what's going to be on the ballot, it's a pretty clear contrast between the two candidates. So you've got Justice Karen Baker and Justice Rhonda Wood that are vying for Chief Justice. I believe the Republican Party, I saw earlier this week, Republican Party of Arkansas has endorsed Justice Wood. And look, I think just to be right down the middle on this, Justice Baker, she's shown a lot more judicial activism. I feel comfortable saying that. Like she's not a justice that's going in saying, here's what the law says, and so that's how we're going to interpret it. She seems to be a lot more ideologically driven, and I think that's something that's of concern. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's a really important race that a lot of folks are going to go into the ballot and be surprised to see that on there. And I would just encourage folks, go to Ballotpedia. That's a great resource to read up on these races. And make sure you're making an informed vote.
Well, and it's extra hard and extra important to do the research on this when you talk about judges, because it's not going to tell you on the ballot, what lane one of the judges are. These are nonpartisan, and so so Ballotpedia, like you said, is going to be a
and to that point, not to go down another rabbit trail here, but I think that's actually a pretty big problem, and that's something we've been talking about at Opportunity Arkansas that we have on our policy agenda to say. And it's not because we want partisanship in the judicial system. I mean, that's not the case whatsoever. There are a lot of states, even states around us, that have partisan judicial positions, and the effect of that is it's about transparency. It's about transparency for voters when they go into the voting booth to know, everyone has an ideology. Everyone has some way that they're going to approach these issues. Does putting an R and a D by someone's name perfectly tell you how they're going to rule on every single issue? No, of course not. But does it give you more information than you would otherwise have when you just walk in and you just see two names on the ballot? Yeah, absolutely it does. It gives you at least some sort of indication, some sort of direction about where this person stands on issues that are important to Arkansans. So I think that's something we need to address and change at some point in the near future, because you've got folks going into the ballot. And it's just like these ballot issues with very little information. It's the same thing on these judicial races, prosecutor races, on down the ballot. We have these nonpartisan races. There's no such thing as a nonpartisan office. There's no such thing as a non-ideological government-held position. I mean, everyone has beliefs and things that they believe in. That's why they're running for office. So we need more transparency in that to make sure Arkansans know who they're being asked to vote for.
You end up voting blind is what it comes down to, and that's not what you want. That's not a good vote. And so yes, definitely definitely go and look at Ballotpedia and get that information. Make sure that especially when you talk about judges, make sure that which way you're voting and how that's going to work out for you in the end. Just real quick, Nick, we've got a couple of minutes left. You had a post the other day. It was about a hospital in Newport, Arkansas, that's having to stop delivering babies, and I think this plays into some of the healthcare talk and healthcare reforms that you've been talking about with Opportunity Arkansas. What's going on with this? Why are they having to stop delivering babies?
Well, gosh, there's so many layers to this, and it's such an important issue. And I think what's been frustrating to me as someone who's been involved in the policy fight, in the policy world here in Arkansas, going back more than a decade now. I was there at the Capitol in 2013 when the first Republican legislature in history got hoodwinked by then Democrat Governor Mike Beebe into expanding Medicaid. And I was there, and many other people were there, not just me. A lot of other conservative voices, Bruce Westerman, who's a congressman now for the 4th District, and many others, sounding the alarm and saying, we can't take our Medicaid system that at the time already had 600, 700,000 people on it. We can't take this program and explode it by 50% and add hundreds of thousands of more people to it and expect a good outcome. I mean, the Medicaid program at the time, the traditional Medicaid program, was already broken. We already had, huge percentages of number of doctors in the state of Arkansas that wouldn't accept Medicaid patients because the reimbursement rates were so low. We were sounding the alarm about that 12 years ago, 10 years ago, and telling policymakers we need to address our traditional Medicaid program. We need to fix the systemic problems in our existing Medicaid program before we expand and just chase this free, quote-unquote, federal money that is not going to do anything except add more people to dependency, add more people to the welfare rolls, and divert time and energy and resources away from people that truly need help. So here we are now, 10, 11 years later. What's happening? We have a maternal health crisis, we're told. We have hospitals that have been shutting down and closing positions and laying off jobs. And now you have, as you mentioned, this hospital in Newport that said, you know what? We're not gonna provide maternal health care anymore to people on Medicaid because the reimbursement rates are so low. I mean, they said that. That's not just my interpretation. They said that in the news story.
Right.
That was part of their decision to cut these services. And so what has happened, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, as you could probably tell, and we can revisit this certainly going forward.
And
it's going to be a big topic in the legislative session. But what has happened in a nutshell is we have lost our focus and we have gotten distracted by free federal money, and we have spent all of our time and energy, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of our time and energy trying to add more people to the program and draw down more federal money rather than getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's broken within our core traditional Medicaid program and getting serious about fixing that. That's what we should have been doing the last decade, and we just haven't done it. And so now we're seeing the effects of that. And then you have, I mean, it just blows my mind. You have state officials now, I won't name names, but they've named themselves. You can go look on my Twitter feed. They're out there that are saying, well, the answer to all this is just to spend more Medicaid money and to add more Medicaid services and to add this and to add that. You're not, by adding things on to the periphery, like the extension of the Medicaid program, you're not solving any of the problems within the existing program. And so we've got to get serious about that. We've got to make sure that our Medicaid program is strong for people that really need it. And there are a lot of those folks across the state who have disabilities, who are in nursing homes, who are elderly and frail, and they have nowhere else to go. They have no other options.
Right.
That's who we should be focused on, and fixing this program for them. And it's long past time that we do that, and we're going to make it happen. We're going to stay focused on this and keep fighting for those people.
Yeah, obviously, as you said, a lot of layers to that, and we will continue to talk about it when you join us each week, Nick, because it's an important issue here in our state, and very important for taxpayers because we're wasting a lot of money at this point. But of course, if you want to see the work that Opportunity Arkansas has done on Medicaid reform, and they've got some new stuff up on income tax reform as well, you can go to opportunityarkansas.org. That is the website, and you can also look them up on Twitter at Opportunity Arkansas and find some of that information there. But Nick, always appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll talk again next week.
Hey, this is so much fun as always. Thanks for having me on, brother.